Hello and welcome to Bridgewood Online. I'm Pastor Sean, and thank you so much for joining with us today. Pastor Kurt, our lead pastor, is coming in just a couple moments to continue his series entitled Resilience. If you have missed any one of these messages in this series, let me encourage you to go back and take a look at those on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. Because they have been an amazing encouragement to me and to so many others here at Bridgewood. And so let me encourage you to do that today. Before he comes, let me give you a couple things that are going on around here for you and your family. As we enter this final week of our 21 days of prayer and fasting, would you join us on Monday and on Wednesday? The times and locations are right there on the screen for you. Here at Bridgewood, we grow in experiences, but we do life in groups. And so if you are a life group leader, we need you to register your group by today to where we can get those into the system and then open up the life group registry in the weeks to come. This winter and spring semester, we have 4 different growth classes that are available for you and your family. And so would you follow the URL? Would you click on the QR code and follow that? You can read all about what is being offered and the classes that are available. And so hop on and let's grow together. Well, I know that Pastor Kurt is anxious to share this word today. And so here is Pastor Kurt, lead pastor of Bridgewood Church.
Turn my microphone on, and come on, everybody. Let's welcome those that are watching online today, wherever they're watching from. We are so glad we're one church that meets at a couple of different locations this weekend, and it was really funny because as the snow was coming down early this morning, I got some shout-outs from our family members that are snowbirds in Florida. And so I'm putting a shout out right back to Ross and Rebecca Dickinson. They text me and said, man, we're watching you from Florida by the pool this morning. Come on, guys. We love you. We miss you. Essmingers and Highleys. We got so many families that are down there doing the snowbird thing. And the only thing that's left is us penguins here in Michigan. And we're so glad that you came. And listen, if you're new with us to this first experience, we're honored to have you this weekend. And we're wrapping up a series today, but we really love the opportunity to connect with you. And so if you're online, an online host is there to assist you. But if you're here live, we have a connection card right there in the seat back in front of you. I promise it's a safe card. You fill that card out, and you can connect with us, and we'll connect with you. And if anything, we would love to have your updated information. So in the event that we are sending out critical information like services being changed because of the weather, or it's pushed back, and we're having one service only, something like that, we have your updated information. We would love to have that. So thank you. Before I dive into this, I'm going to just take a few of these announcements. We are ready now to kick off 2023. You know, these first few weeks, we're in 21 days of prayer and fasting. Come on, everybody. We're in week 3 this week of 21 days of prayer and fasting. So we're on the home stretch, and I'm so proud of you because so many of you have been on this journey with us. And come on, let's finish this thing strong. Let's watch God do amazing things. We have reports coming in of God doing incredible things. We had a couple of prayer gatherings this past week, and then we've got 2 more this week. So Monday night and Wednesday night. Monday night's going to be really awesome because we're going to draw these different circles all through our campus here that kind of represent different things that we're going to pray for. And you're going to have the ability just to kind of move around, and when you get to that circle, you can pray for that need and then move to another circle, and it's going to be great. And then on Wednesday, we're just going to kind of just bring this thing to a whole nother level with our students and our adults. We're going to have worship and prayer night, and God is going to do amazing things. So that's Wednesday night right here at our Clarkson campus. So let's just do this, 7 a.m. I can't wait. I'm going to be on a few times this week at 7 a.m. to to just really wrap this up and finish it off. And I am just excited about all that God has in store. Also, want to let you know, groups are about to kick in. Okay, our life groups is the DNA of this church. So we can take a larger church, break it down into smaller groups. One more week, okay, to get your group listed on our register, and then next week the registry goes live. I already got a quick sneak peek, and there are some really good ones coming, everybody. So you're not going to want to miss it, but a few of you are still getting your group together and getting it registered, so make sure you do that. And then growth classes are kicking off, and growth classes is our midweek experience where our students kind of take over this auditorium, and God meets with them, but then we get to have opportunities where we can have classes that just help you grow in your faith, take those next steps. You'll see them all listed there, QR codes for all of this. So every time we do this, just grab your phone. You can click on it and sign up. Now, we have limited class space. If you've been in any of our classes here, we wish that we had a lot of classrooms in space, but we don't. And so these are limited, and we don't want you to miss out on it. So make sure you do this. And then I'm really excited because this all just came together this week, and we're releasing it to you just to kind of save the date. And then next week you'll be able to purchase tickets. But we are doing a date night, everybody, Sweets and Beats, right here at our Clarkson campus with live music, covers and originals from Caleb and Michaela Weaver. They're coming all the way back for this event, and it is going to be amazing. And so this place is going to be decked out, a coffee bar, a dessert bar, prizes. We're going to do some overnight giveaways, some date night giveaways and all that. And listen, it's just going to be a fun evening, all right? Here's what we think is going to happen. They're going to sell out real fast. So we wanted to do 2 shows, 6:30 and 8:30, okay? In the event that we're not able to do that, we'll split the difference and go at 7, but we would communicate that with you, but I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. 6:30 and 8:30. It'd be really good if you have young kids. If you don't have young kids, let the ones with kids do the 6:30 experience, so it's not super late. 8:30, dessert, coffee, all of that, and it's going to be really powerful. Now, here's the heart behind this, okay? I love date night. I would love to be able to do date night with you and spend time. We'll have a great time. There's no doubt about it. But you talk about an opportunity to invite your friends. This is it, okay? In a non-threatening way, but a way that they could get to meet other people here, to have a great night out. Maybe you catch dinner beforehand, then come to dessert night or whatever, but what a great opportunity. My challenge to you is find another couple, a friend of yours you do life with, you do dinner with, and say, man, we'd love to have you come to this dessert date night, and it will be great. So mark that down. It's going to be fun. It's February the 10th, Friday night, and it will get your Valentine all taken care of before Valentine's even comes, right? And this isn't, I forgot to mention that, not just for married couples, okay? Dating couples. And some of you need to date. You need to start dating. And if you need help with that, you see me, I'll help you. All right? Because some of you, and listen, you don't have to be fully committed to go out on a date. I don't know where people get this idea that, man, if you ask someone out, like you're locked in and everyone's going to be talking about you. Just have a fun night, everybody. Like, go find somebody and just say, listen, let's get together, and I would love to have you come. See me after, I'll help you out. All right, here we go. We're in a series we're going to wrap up today that we've been in over the last few weeks called Resilience. And this series is talking about how can we find strength for today and hope for tomorrow. How do we build resilience in our life, in our faith? And we're talking about getting tough. Here's what resilience means: the capacity to be able to recover quickly when you come up against difficulty in your life, when you get socked by the life or the pressures of life or the stresses of life. Can you bounce back? Are you tough? Are you committed to your faith in spite of the circumstances that you're going through. And it's developing that strength in our faith that is going to help us in the days in which we're living, because it is getting tougher, everybody. Would you agree? It is being tougher to have faith in these days and stand up for what you believe in. And so we're talking about that resilience, and we've been looking at a prophet by the name of Habakkuk. And so go ahead and get there. We're going to be there in chapter 3. He's a prophet, and here's what a prophet would do. A prophet would hear from God, much like I've done, and then communicate to the people. This is what God is saying, and would stand before people and communicate. Now, Habakkuk, he flips the script, and he does more talking to God on behalf of the people than talking to the people on behalf of God. He's frustrated. He is living in a time where he is watching the corruption and wickedness of the land of Israel get to a level it's never been. And he's watching the hand and blessing of God being lifted off. And he's frustrated, and he doesn't understand why people's hearts are turning away from God, and people are running and doing their own thing that once worshiped God. And so he's seeing all of this in real time, and he's bringing that heart to God. He's bringing those frustrations. He's bringing his anxiety to God, and he's just saying, God, listen, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what is happening, but are you listening? Do you care about what's going on? And he brings his complaints to God, and he says, God, I don't know that you care. I don't know that you're really listening to what I'm saying. God, I don't even know if you have the ability to do anything, because I know you can, but you haven't. And God, what's happening right now makes no sense to me. Like, I think we can all agree, after 3 weeks now, we've all been there at some point. Would you agree? We've all been in that crisis of faith, or that crisis of belief, where what we see and what we feel doesn't line up with what we know about God. Well, I know God's a good God, and I know God's a healer, and I know God can deliver and save, but I'm not seeing that. I'm not experiencing that in my life. And it's this crisis of faith and belief. It's like, what do you do in those moments? And then God says, all right, I'm going to answer you. And so in verses 5 and 6 of chapter 1, God answers Habakkuk. And he says, here's what I'm going to do. Now, I'm not going to do what you're probably anticipating. I'm not even going to do what may even make sense to you, but here's what I'm going to do. I am going to raise up the Babylonians, who are your enemies, to deal with you. Now, he immediately begins to push back against God, right? He's thinking to himself, you got to be kidding me, God. You're going to use someone worse than us to deal with us. There's all this injustice, and there's all this evil. And God goes, oh no, I see the evil. I see all the injustice, and I'm going to deal with it. Here's how I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to raise up your enemies, and I'm going to deal with it in you first before I deal with them. Now, come on, let's be honest. What do you do when you want God to deal with someone else, but God wants to deal with you? Ever pray that way? God, my spouse is driving me crazy. You got to work on them. You got to change them. And God's like, oh, I'm going to change them, but I'm going to deal with the change that needs to happen in you first. And he's really pushing back. Now he's got an issue with God's word. Because God has spoken, but he has an issue with his word. Anybody ever have a problem with the word? You kind of read the word and you're like, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. God, why is that your response? And so he's pushing back on it. And we said in week number 1, when do you wrestle with God? You wrestle and worship with God when you're desperate. When you're working through things in your life and you're wrestling with the issues, but you're still embracing God and worshiping God. You're wrestling with God. This doesn't make sense. I don't know what you're doing. I'm not even sure you care. But at the same time, I know how good you are, God. I'm not going to give up on you. I'm going to be resilient. I'm trying to be tough. I'm going to wrestle and I'm going to worship. But what do you do when the wrestling and the worship wears you out? And so in week number 2, we said, you've got to stop sometimes and be quiet enough to listen. And there are 2 times in particular, I believe, that we need to stop and listen. The first is when you haven't heard God speak in a long time. Like, here's the deal. God does not have a speaking problem. We have a listening problem. So it's not like, God, there must be something wrong with you. God, you must have lost your voice. God, you must be doing something else. No, that is not going to be the problem. The problem is going to be, am I hearing? Am I too distracted? Or am I just not aware of God's voice? That's why we got to learn how to recognize God's voice. Because maybe He is speaking, but you just don't recognize it. Or maybe He has spoken, but you don't want to hear it. But the question is, He speaks, and He wants to be speaking into our life. So it has been a long time. Is probably a good time to stop and listen. And the second time is when God does speak. But what He says doesn't make sense to you. That's when, too, you've got to stop and listen, and you've got to say, God, I don't understand, and this doesn't necessarily make sense to me, but in this moment, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to settle myself. I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to wait on it. I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to wait on it. We challenged you last week. Just write it down, and then let it just kind of simmer in your heart. Try to catch the heart of God, because at first glance it may not make sense to us until it has time to work its way into our heart and our life, and we kind of catch the heart behind what God is saying. Because if you really look at what God was saying here, He wasn't saying, I am not going to do something for you. He just said, the way that I'm going to do it isn't the way that you would do it. So it isn't like God just abandoned them, said, hey, I'm just going to raise up enemies and wipe you out. I'm done with you. No, He's just going to do it, but He's going to do it His way, not our way. And so in those moments, we got to stop and we have to listen. So what do you do if you've wrestled and you've worshiped and you've just been in that state for a long time to where you got wiped out? Then you stopped and you listened, you wrote it down. God spoke to you, you wrote it in your journal, you wrote it on a card, you've been waiting for it, but the waiting now seems like forever. Like the waiting has been gone on for a long, long time. And again, you're not sure you can be resilient, tough enough to hold on because it's just been so long. What do you do in that moment? Which leads us to week number 3. And here's what I would submit to you, what we're going to talk about today. Here's what you do. You worship God no matter what. You worship God no matter what. And we're going to look at this in Habakkuk 3, is we're going to see him in this moment worship God like he's never worshiped Him before. And I know that may seem impossible to you, because you're thinking to yourself the same thing I'm thinking, that when I'm in pain, when I'm struggling, when I'm confused, worship is not my go-to. Anybody? Like, that's not the first thing I think of in that moment. Like, I'm just going to stop now and worship the Lord. Some of you, worship's just hard in and of itself, because you just don't feel like it. Like, you get here at 9 a.m. for this 9 a.m. experience. You're already a little bummed out because of the snow. You're already like, And then worship starts, and you're like, I just don't feel like it. I've had a rough week, and you're anxiously thinking about something that's coming up this week, or you're a little distracted by looking around. And so it's like, you know what? I don't even really feel like this anyway. But on top of it, when I'm in a moment where I'm struggling and I'm in pain and it doesn't make sense, definitely not when I'm most motivated to worship. But here's what Habakkuk is saying. He's saying in those moments, there is something that happens that I want you to see. So let's go to Habakkuk 3, verses 1 and 2. Let's read this together. Watch this, and then I'm going to point this out to you. He says, Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Repeat them. The word is renew. It's translated in the NIV, repeat. It means the same thing, but renew or repeat them in our day. In our time, make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. Okay, let me unpack something and show you something here. Let's go back. He says, Lord, I have heard of your fame. Let me ask you a question. Is that past tense or present tense? Not a trick question, everybody. Is it past tense or is it present tense? Yeah, past tense. He's saying, I remember or I've heard about your fame. Then he says this, I stand in awe of your deeds. Is that past or present tense? Present tense. Do you see what he did? He's thinking past, but he's responding in the present. I don't want you to miss this, because this is how you worship no matter what in those moments. He's thinking about what God did for him in the past, but he's responding in the present, in his current reality. He's saying, but God, I stand in awe of your deeds. I know what you've done in the past, but I know what you can do right now. And so if you can't see God's faithfulness in the present, here's what you do. You go back to the past and you remember his faithfulness and you pull it into the present. That's what he's doing. And not only that, but notice what he's saying. He's saying, God, I want you to repeat them and renew them in our day. What he's saying is, the things that you did for me before or in the past, I'm pulling it into the present. I want you to do that right now. I want you to do what you did then, now, is what he's saying. The word renew or repeat translated in the Hebrew is the word chaya or kaya, and it simply means this: to repeat, to restore, or to revive. And he's saying, I want you to repeat that in this moment. I want you to restore what you did then, now. I want you to do that right now in this moment, oh God. I don't see it. I'm not living in it right now, but I know what you did in the past, and I know that you could revive it, restore it, and do it again right now in this moment. And so he's right there, and he's wrestling, and he's waiting. Now, remember, God said, I have an appointed time, back in chapter 1. We know that God's time is not our time. And we don't always know how long that time's going to be. And so he's living in that moment, and he's trying to worship and wrestle at the same time. He's now in this moment where he's worshiping God, and it even is unnatural for him because he doesn't even really feel it on the inside, but he's doing it because he's resilient. He's doing it because he's tough. And so you say, how do you just get to that point? How do you worship God in those moments? And I want to show you what Habakkuk did. And I want you to get this. Number one, remember what God has done. Remember what God has done. Look back at what God has done in your past. Has God been good to you? Has God done anything for you? Has God restored you or healed you or saved you or whatever? No, you may not see that right now in this moment, but has God done that for you? Can you look back in your life and remember? Now, look at verse number 3, because this is one of those verses where when you're reading through the Bible, you read right over this because it makes absolutely no sense. God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens, and his praise filled the earth. So he's remembering back, and he mentions these cities and these places. Now, to you and I, if you don't study the Bible, if you don't take a moment to stop here and go, when the Bible does this, it would probably be a good idea to stop and then go back and go, why is he mentioning these places? Because if you understand Mount Paran, that is where, after God delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt, he brought them to Mount Paran. And so it was there where God said, after 400 years of being in Egyptian slavery, where they were crying out to God, going, God, do you hear us? God, you're making no sense. Why are we in slavery? We're supposed to be your people. God, if you can deliver us, why haven't you? And then God delivers them supernaturally as Moses leads them out of Egypt. They cross the Red Sea. God even allows them to look back and see the enemies that were raised up to bring them into slavery all drown in the sea, and then brings them to Mount Paran. And what is he saying in Mount Paran? He's saying, listen, everybody, it's a new day. I'm going to revive you now. I'm going to restore you. We're going to start over again. And we're going to now have a destiny and a future for you. He's connecting all of that by looking back, remembering what God had done. And so here's what I want you to understand is that thought that Habakkuk has triggers faith. Remembering what God has done triggers faith in our life. And he's remembering, yeah, God, you did that. Yeah, God, you did when it didn't make sense. Oh, I do remember it did make sense. And you did have a plan. And remembering, that's why, everybody, listen, what you remember matters. What you remember, some things you look back and all it's going to do is trigger fear. Like you're going to look back and go, oh, I remember when that, and I remember when that, and boom, fear is just going to be boom. But there are many things you're going to look back and it's going to trigger faith. And that faith is the faith that you need to be resilient. That faith is what brings the toughness into our life to say, God, I'm going to worship you no matter what in this moment because I know who you are. Remembrance, write this down, is a spiritual discipline. I know we don't talk about it that way, but it is. Remembrance is a spiritual discipline. Here's why I say that. Do you understand there are 300 commands in the Bible that tell us to remember or uses a form of the word that means the same thing, like do not forget. Do not forget means remember. Or the word remember. 300 times God commands his people to remember something. That's a discipline that brings resilience into our life, that triggers faith in our life, that helps us to worship God in the moments that we don't want to worship is there. And that's what Habakkuk is doing, is he's going back and he's remembering. I don't want to forget this. I'm going to remember this. Deuteronomy 6, 12 through 13. It says this, be careful that you do not forget the Lord. How many of you know that's possible? Who brought you out of Egypt, the land of slavery. Fear the Lord your God, serve him only, and take oaths in his name. He says this in another place, be careful that you do not forget the Lord. failing to observe his commands, his laws, his decrees I'm giving you in this day. Otherwise, watch this, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build the house and settle down, and when your herds and flocks grow large, and your silver and gold increase, and all has multiplied. You talk about success times success. Then your heart will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. And he goes on, he says, man, he was the one. God was the one that led you through the wilderness. He didn't just lead you halfway. He led you all the way through. He gave you manna to eat. He supplied for your need when you were there. Remember the Lord your God. What is he doing? He's triggering faith within the people. Don't forget the Lord. Remember the Lord and remember what he's done for you. Psalm 10, verse 12. Arise, Lord, lift up your hand, O God. Do not forget the helpless. Do not forget those that are in need. Do not forget those that can't help themselves. This past week, on Thursday, I shared with you we were presenting our future expansion plans to the preliminary meeting with the township. And many of you have texted or asked, and you said, well, how did it go? It went like a preliminary meeting should go, because you got a group of people there. Their whole objective is to pretty much criticize it and tell you, if you're going to get this passed, here's what you need to change, or here's what you need to do. The good thing is, everybody, the most important point to us, they love the design and the look of it. So that was a win, thank God. The things that they didn't, that we're going to pray for, obviously parking. Nobody likes parking, and they don't like to see big parking lots, and traffic flow and neighbors and all of that kind of stuff that are typically there. This is a special land use. We're on the northwest corner of the township in the more rural areas, so a lot of this commercial stuff is that way, this way, want to protect it. And so all of that was going on, but as we were going into that meeting, I was thinking back to when we went for this meeting to build this site, and then when we had to do it for the Goodrich campus, and I was remembering about God when we walked in there and we weren't sure what was going to happen, and you gave us favor, and we went right through those processes. In phase one of our Clarkson campus, had no issues at all with our Goodrich campus. God was good to us. He provided. I even looked back and I remembered, God, we had about 50 people in a building, and we needed about $3.5 million to buy property and build a building. And I'll be honest with you, people were laughing at me. They're like, you got to be absolutely out of your mind. There were people that thought I was reckless, that thought if you get $3.5 million and you don't know where it's going to come from and how you're going to pay for it and all that's reckless and all of that stuff. I was remembering all of that, and then I was remembering how the church that we came from, Brighton, the pastors there that have been longtime friends and mentors of Christy and I said, we believe in you guys, and we're going to send you out, but we're not just going to send you out, but we're going to send a seed with you. And they gave us a seed to plant this church financially. Just said, we're going to put this seed into the ground, and we're going to believe that God is going to multiply it and use it. In church, we would not be here today, I'm telling you, if someone didn't put a seed in the ground on our behalf when we didn't have it. And as I was remembering all of that, it was like in the midst of these 21 days of prayer, the Lord just spoke to me in that moment. I sensed very clearly God just speak to us and just said, here's what you need to do. And so I got on the text real quick to our board and to our team, and I said, this is what God is saying. This is what I really feel like we need to do. And so, Dustin, Colette, I see you right back there. Would you guys just get up, run up here super fast, if you would? Come on, give these guys a big hand. And if you have not heard, this fall, these two, along with an incredible team, are going to plant a church in the city of Pontiac, and we could not be more excited. And these guys could not be the best leaders to do that. And we're super excited, and just believe God's going to do great things. But guys, I was thinking back, and I was remembering, because you're going through things right now that we went through 20 years ago. And it's so interesting to hear the conversation. It's so interesting to see your minds and your hearts spinning and all of those kind of things. Like, God, how are you going to do this? And is it this? Is it that? Do we do this? Do we not do that? And not only are we praying with you guys during these 21 days of prayer and fasting, but here's what God said. God said, I want you to take the seed that was used to plant this church, and I want you to reseed it into Pontiac Church. And so, guys, come on out here. Thank you, Alyssa. We want to put the first seed into the ground, $30,000, just to start. Come on. Now watch this. This seed that was given to us multiplied into a $3.5 million open door that God had provided us. If you don't know our story, within the first 2 years, God brought somebody along that said, we're going to front everything for this property in this building, which was $3.5 million. $30,000 became $3.5 million, because $30,000 put in God's hands can become 3 million, 6 million, 18 million, whatever, because it's the faith, it's not what it is. And so not only will we month to month continue to do it, put this seed and continue to put more into it, but I believe that God can multiply this and then some. So here's what I want you to do. Stretch your hand towards this, and can we just ask God to miraculously multiply so that what they need is more than enough supplied by God. So Father, thank you so much. We're remembering back at what you did for us here at Bridgewood. God, when we were helpless, when we didn't know how we were going to do it, and we didn't have the resources, and we didn't have the people, and we didn't have a building and all of that, someone had faith to put seed in the ground and say, we believe, and we will pray, and we will do whatever we have to do. And that multiplied, and then multiplied again, helped us to get a second campus, and then multiplied it again. And so right now, in the authority of your name, we stretch our hand towards this and pray that this will be multiplied 2, 3, 10, 50, 100 times what is needed for the church, Pontiac Church, in the city of Pontiac this fall. In Jesus' name, we believe it and we declare it. Amen and amen. God bless you guys. She'll take it. We'll do it again. I love you guys. Come on. Give them one more big hand, would you? Now, I know God was speaking to me. At the same time, I know the weight that we're carrying on how we're going to do what we're going to do. But I made you a commitment and a promise as a church that no matter what our need is and no matter how heavy that weight is, we will not stop being generous as a church outside of these four walls. It will not happen as long as I'm leading this place. We will continue to give above and beyond a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, to see ministry and the kingdom of God flourish. Amen? Is that all right, everybody? Thank you, the 7 of you. Now, why do we remember? Because here, we're all prone to forget. We're sheep, remember? We're prone to wander, but we're also prone to forget. Now look at Habakkuk 3 and verses 5 and 6 and then 9 through 11. Here's what he does. He starts remembering back God, and he's remembering how he created the galaxy and how God spoke the word and things happened. And whenever anyone would try to destroy God, God could move them out of the way. He's remembering the past. He's remembering creation. He's remembering the powerful galaxies that are out there in the present time. He's just going back and he's remembering and he's remembering and he's remembering and he's bringing the past into the present and saying, God, it doesn't matter what I see. I'm going to worship you no matter what. Then he's going to trust God. Write this down. He's going to trust God in the present. He's going to trust God in the present. Now, let's just get real honest and real. When you think about your situation, when I think about my situation, here's what I say to myself. What other option do I have? I'm a realist, okay? I'm not a pessimist. I'm not an optimistic. I'm a realist. And some of you would say, oh, no, you're a person of faith. I believe a person of faith is a realist. Okay, I don't deny things. I don't go crazy and speak everything into existence. I try to live right in the reality, the present day, into the real things that we're dealing with in life. And I'm a realist. I look at it. It takes more faith. Like, it's just crazy to me. It takes more faith to think this world just started with a bang than it does a creator. Like, I'm just being real with you. Like, I just can't get there. Show me something on this planet right now that's created that isn't attached to a creator. You find it, you bring it to me and show me, but whether it's a computer, a car, or anything, there was a creator, a designer behind it. It's somewhere, oh, you know what, you gotta look at the science. Here's what science is, everybody. Science is just telling the world what God already did. That's all science is doing. I'm pro-science because science is pro-God, because it's just it's discovering, it's digging up all of the things that God has already said and already done. But what other option do we have but to trust God in these moments? Look at verse 16. Habakkuk says, I heard. Now he's thinking back that God had said to him, I'm going to raise up your enemies, and this is how I'm going to deal with the situation. And here was his response, verse 16. I heard, and my heart pounded, and my lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept into my bones, and my legs trembled. Yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. Do you see what he's doing? Like, just the sheer thought that God said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to raise up your enemies, and I'm going to use them to judge you, scared Habakkuk to death. We're talking lips quivering. We're talking about his bones are decayed. Like he's thinking, are we going to live, or am I going to die? What's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to the nation? I mean, he's just being real. Like, that overwhelmed him. But then he trusted God, and he said, but I'm going to wait patiently, God, because I know who you are, and you only have good plans, and plans to prosper us, and plans for a future. And so even though it doesn't make sense to me, and even though I don't have all the details, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you. Look at verse 17. Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, and the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. What he's saying is, even if my situation keeps getting worse, even if all the money runs out and the food is gone, and my body is still sick, and there's still chaos in my life, yet I will rejoice in you. I will be joyful in God my Savior. Do you see? He's worshiping God no matter what. He's so resilient in this moment because what was meant maybe to crush right through him if the enemy were in control, he's now bouncing right back with a toughness and a resilience to his faith, saying, it doesn't matter what I see, I'm going to rejoice and I'm going to worship you, God. Friends, this is resilience. This is what we're talking about. This is the toughness that God is saying has got to be formed in our life, because here's the deal. We're at the end of Habakkuk 3, and there's no answer. There's no resolve. He still has no idea what's going to happen. He's still left wondering, God, I trust you, but I don't know how all this is going to work out. Remember I said this is like the sitcom that doesn't wrap up in 30 minutes. It doesn't wrap up in 30 years. It doesn't wrap up in 300 years. Yet I will rejoice. Yet I will worship you, God. Yet I will look to you. When I have more reason to worry, I have more reason to worship, everybody. When I have more reason to say to God, God, this is crazy, I have more reason to lift my hands and worship him. And can this be said? Because this is what worship is all about. We don't worship God for the answer. We worship God because he's worthy to be worshiped. We don't worship him for the answer. Because if you don't get the answer that I want, and I don't get the answer, then do we not worship him? No, we worship him because he's worthy to be worshiped. And when we worship him, when we trust and we worship, when we trust and we worship, when we wrestle and we worship, when we stop and we listen, when we write it down and we wait, we come back to trusting and worshiping. Trusting and worshiping. I'm worshiping you no matter what, God. I'm looking to you in this moment no matter what, because that's who you are. So friends, I submit to you that true resilience is worshiping God when the circumstances around you don't make sense, when they haven't been answered yet, when you're wondering, God, can you and are you really listening? Something powerful happens when we worship him. Would you stand with me right where you're at? And today, we're going to have an opportunity to do exactly what Habakkuk does. See, let me sum it all up this way. If we want to get to a Habakkuk 3 response, you have to go through a Habakkuk 1 wrestling, and you have to go through a Habakkuk 2 stopping and shutting up and listening for a few moments to get to a Habakkuk 3 worship. There's no shortcut. And when you look back at how good God has been to you and how faithful he has been to you, it triggers faith. And it triggers resilience and toughness. So what a great weekend to come to a communion table and do exactly that. What does God say? When you come to this table, do this in what? Remembrance of me. He said, I want you to look back at what I did 2,000 years ago, and I want you to bring that into your present reality. And so every time we do this, it's a discipline of remembering how good God is. And James 1, 2, and 4, I love it. Consider pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because, you know, the testing of your faith is like, God, I don't know why, and why am I going through this? And he says, you rejoice, worship no matter what, because it's doing something in you. And then Hebrews 12:2 connects us to Jesus. When we fix our eyes on Jesus, the author, the pioneer, the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. What was the joy set before him? You and I. He found joy in the fact that what he was going to go through, you and I, we get to escape. And that brought him joy, and he worshiped his Father through that whole experience for the joy that you and I wouldn't have to go through that. And so for a few minutes today, we're going to worship more at the end. That's why it was a little abbreviated up front. And we're going to remember how good God has been. But before we do that, would you just close your eyes right where you're at? Because maybe some of you have been on this journey where you've wrestled, but you haven't worshiped. You're wrestling, but you don't know God. And here's the deal. If you're wrestling without knowing God, the wrestling many times is going to cause you to run from God. Because the moment we get frustrated, the moment we get angry, I know I do, you often run away from God. You don't run to God. But here's the plan of God, that you would run to him. I would rather you wrestle with God than run from God. And maybe the last 3 weeks, maybe you're watching online, wherever you're at, and you've been wrestling, and you've come to the conclusion that Jesus doesn't just need to be a part of your life, he needs to be your life. And I want to give you an opportunity in this moment to just simply say, Jesus, I need you. Would you come in? Would you help me? I need your help. I'm struggling. I know you have a plan for me. I don't see it right now, but I trust you. And maybe right here in this first experience, God is just tugging on your heart. If that's you, would you just wave at me? Would you look at me? I'm going to pray for you, but I just thank you. Thank you. Just surrender to Jesus. You're not surrendering to me. You're surrendering to Jesus. Just say, Jesus, I need you. I need you in this moment. Thank you. Why don't we do this? Why don't we pray a prayer together? I'd love for you to pray this out loud with me. And let's just make this a declaration that, God, we need you. Say, dear Jesus, I need you. I'm desperate without you. With you, I can have life. Without you, I'm on my own. Thank you for coming to this world, giving your life for me, for my sin, for my guilt, for my shame. I welcome you into my life. Would you lead me? Would you guide me? Would you help me wrestle through the things I'm struggling with to get to a place where I can truly live and worship you. Thank you for loving me. Amen. Amen. Friends, that's a simple prayer that opens the door to the most incredible relationship that you'll ever experience. It far outdoes anything on this earth. It's to have a relationship with your Heavenly Father, your Creator, your Designer, and we would love the opportunity to help you and to navigate you through 2023. What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? And friends, there was several that lifted their hand. I don't even know online or what's going to happen throughout this day. Can we just give thanks to God? The Bible says every person matters to God. Every person matters. And He loves you so much. He loves you so much. We'd love to help you discover that. And so we're going to be hanging out in the gallery. Our team is here. Let someone know, you know what, I'm taking steps toward knowing Him, and I don't really know what I'm doing. I need some help. There are Bibles at the doors back there. Starting Point is one of the growth classes that we're offering, which is a great place to start to say, I really need to know more about this Jesus. And we've got everything that you need available. And we'd love the opportunity to do that. Now, here's what we're going to do. There are communion stations that are set up in the back and 2 in the front. They are gluten-free, so if that's an issue with you, don't worry about it. We've taken care of that, but they're here. And we're going to ask you to move to one of these stations. We're going to ask you to go back to your seat. And here's what I want you to do. Okay, the Bible simply says this. When we do this in remembrance that Jesus' broken body represents what He went through, the crucifixion and the pain, so that our bodies wouldn't go through that, so that we wouldn't suffer in that way. And that He's our healer and that He's our provider. And so you can think about that. The cup represents the new covenant. He said, from this moment on, I'm making a new covenant. It's not based on your works anymore, your performance. This cup represents my blood that will forgive you of your sin. It's not based on what you do. It's based on what I did for you. And what I did for you was I wiped the slate clean. And I forgave you, and my mercies are new. And so you take that back. And as this song is being played, when you feel the moment is right, I want you to take that communion. I want you to remember personally what Jesus did for you, okay? And if you just prayed that prayer and you're new and you say, I've never done this before, we'll welcome you. Just come and take the elements and bring them back. Just sit there and in this song. Now, the song I'm going to play for you, okay, is going to be on the screen. I found what resilience looks like through a personal experience, a person that we know. There's a church in Grand Rapids First. It's an amazing church, amazing leaders. Our worship pastors, Pastor Keegan and Lindsay, were there for a while, and others. And the pastor's daughter, who's a young gal in her 20s, was diagnosed with cancer. Fought that cancer through her life while continuing to come up on the stage and lead worship. And they were wrestling and worshiping. She, many times as she stood on this stage, was wrestling and worshiping at the same time. A year ago, at just 20-some years old, she lost her life to cancer, this earthly life, not her spiritual life. And her 1-year anniversary was this past week. And she sang a song shortly before she passed. It's a song called The Story I'll Tell. And you can sense and you can see what it means to be resilient when you're worshiping and you're wrestling. And so that's going to be played during this. And so as you come up and get it, you can watch it as you go back to your seat. And take it sometime during that. It's about 6 minutes long or so. You have enough time in that moment, but I want you to see what it looks like when it doesn't always go the way we think it ought to go, but yet you embrace God at the same time.
The hour is dark, and it's hard to see what you are doing here in the ruins and where this will lead. Oh, but I know that down through the years, I'll look on this moment and see your hand on it and know you were here. And I'll testify of the battles you've won, how you were my portion when there wasn't enough. And I'll testify of the seas that we've crossed,
Thank you, Pastor Kurt, for that word today. And I hope, church, that you are becoming resilient. I know that I am, and if you are too, would you reach out and share that with us today? There are multiple ways on the screen right now that you can get in contact with us and share your story, how God is moving in your life during this 21 days of prayer and fasting. So would you do that for us today? My prayer is that you have an amazing week this week. And so until next week, we love you and we are praying for you this week.